All right, good morning, everyone. Meteorologist Charles Roop here. It's 11:19, and the latest advisory has been released by the National Hurricane Center on Hurricane Dorian. So a couple of things to keep in mind, some briefing points here. Forecast guidance models have shifted rightward since Friday, and some of the latest suite of models, especially the GFS ensembles, have hinted at that. There's been intensity increase, especially yet again with this advisory from the Hurricane Center at 11 o'clock. So the Big Bend in South Georgia, there are lower odds for impacts, but in the cone, but just for the far eastern areas, maybe. We're getting to be in better shape here in the Big Bend in South Georgia, especially if this trend continues, in the forecast. But those from Florida, the coastal Florida, east coast of Florida, the Carolinas need to be watching this still over the next couple of days. So here's the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center on Dorian, 11 o'clock, 415 miles east of West Palm Beach, Florida, moving west at 8 now. That's different. It's starting to slow down now. Moving max sustained winds at 150 miles per hour, about 5 miles per hour higher than it was the previous advisory at 8 o'clock. So it is continuing to strengthen. Minimum central pressure now at 945 millibars, which matches some of the data I've been seeing from Hurricane Recon, which I believe is still flying out there right now. Here's what we were expecting with the path per the official forecast in the near term. So let's put this out to, say, Monday. This is about a couple days out, and it has it over the Bahamas. By the way, the watches and warnings have not changed since the previous advisory. We still have hurricane warnings for the northern part of the Bahamas. This excludes Andros Island. They're under a watch still. Nothing has changed, so east coast of Florida, still no advisories in effect by the Hurricane Center. So that's the good news so far, but still remain vigilant in the near term. So it could still be a Cat 4 hurricane as it makes its way out to this area. So the Bahamas are under the gun for a very monstrous hurricane as it continues to move off in a westerly fashion. But things start to change. You kind of see a little hint there in the Monday portion of the forecast. For Monday morning, you start to see that turn towards the north. And many of you at home, or especially if you're around, like, say, if I can try to eyeball it here, Live Oak westward, you're maybe breathing a sigh of relief as the cone has shifted a bit more to the right, a bit more to the east. Now, there's a 1/3 chance it could go outside the cone, but the cone, the definition is 2/3 of a chance of staying within that cone. But still, better news than what we had yesterday, even the day before, as parts of the Big Bend in South Georgia were under the cone of uncertainty. That has shifted eastward with the last couple of major advisories. So now the official forecast has it still getting close to the coastline, or even getting inland along the coastline of Florida by the time we get to, like, say, Monday night into Tuesday morning, extending northward by Wednesday morning offshore or near shore or onshore of Jacksonville, for instance, or it could be farther off towards the east. But the Carolinas and southeast Georgia are in play now because of the latest guidance trends and tracks with this storm. There's better news for us. It's not completely certain, but there's better news for us in the Big Bend in South Georgia. We'll continue to monitor any trends and tracks with the forecast in the near term. So with that said, there is a recon, at least one flying out there right now, doing the cross pattern with this storm. And based on some of the pressure readings, yeah, I see a 945 millibar. That was around a 946, a 941. So this thing is still cranking up. It's still looking pretty impressive on satellite imagery, as you see right here. Kind of wobbling a little bit in the last few frames. That's to be expected, especially with such a strong hurricane. Sometimes it's like having an imbalanced wheel, or maybe like a lump in the wheel. It kind of just messes you up as you're driving along. Well, this is kind of the same thing. It's more of a tricolio effect, I believe is the technical term for it. But as it moves off more towards the east, kind of maybe a hair, based on the Hurricane Center advisory, I believe they said it's more of a 280-degree track, so just slightly north. Let me turn my volume down here. So let's go to the next image. This is the visible satellite imagery. It's still looking pretty impressive, folks, as it moves off towards the west, right along that latitude line. You can see pretty much right through the eye. Of course, there's some little cloud cover in there, swirling around the center of circulation. Pretty good convection developing right around the eye. So there's nothing that we see in the near term that would decrease the strength overall. Now, there's some chances for eye wall replacement cycles, which will weaken a little bit and then come back. The inner eye wall will collapse, and then you have the outer eye wall, and it collapses again. It's a whole cycle that goes on through the life of a hurricane. As long as it can sustain itself, there's no shear, or waters don't get too cold. So right now, we have the ridge of high pressure. You see that circled over here towards the north. That's the ridge of high pressure that is still in place. That is the guiding force for this storm. There's also a weak little upper level low sitting south of Miami, south of the Keys over the Florida Straits. Not too much of an element in terms of steering this thing, possibly though giving a little more ventilation to help keep the storm intact or even intensify. So those are two elements in this forecast. Also to the south, too, another meteorologist pointed this out yesterday, is that you get a little ventilation from the storm in the upper levels of the atmosphere, which you can get a little ridge building away from it. So just interesting tidbits from that. Now, here is the big pattern that we have. I'm scrolling through Facebook questions right now. I see someone, so Tallahassee, Florida is out of harm's way. It's looking like it right now. There's still a low chance, but every time the new cone is adjusted, every time I see a new forecast run, the odds are dropping and dropping and dropping. So we're still watching it, but it looks like it's better news for the Big Bend and South Georgia. So on to the reasons why things are changing a little bit. You see that high right there on the screen. That's high pressure in the mid levels of the atmosphere. This is the European model run right now. It's situated over Bermuda. Of course, there's Dorian. There's that weak upper level low I was talking about, and there's like high pressure back off towards the west. So let's put this into motion. Monday, the high's still there, but it's weak. It's not that strong, which is going to allow it to slow down. You don't have enough force pushing this hurricane through the Atlantic, so it's just kind of slowed down along the way. But we also have Dorian reaching the Bahamas by the time we get to sometime Sunday night to Monday morning. So if you have family, friends over there, they need to be ready for this. But as we get to time, that high is going to slide off towards the east. Again, lessening the steering flow for this storm. And you see a trough, too, up towards the north, kind of digging down here. If my pencil's still working, I don't think it is right now. There it is. So you can kind of see that trough digging down over here as well, but not really too far south to have a really great influence on it. But this trough is at least helping break down that ridge a little bit. Let's go forward in time. This high, you'll see it on the maps here. You see the darker reds. Those are what meteorologists call higher heights. In other words, this high is a bit stronger than it was before. And this is when the storm is going to start accelerating to the north, as you see right here in this output from the Euro, especially as that high digs down more into the south here and have more influence in the steering path of the storm, takes it off towards the north, and then a trough of low pressure, you can see it like right over here, digs into the eastern part of the country. Sorry, that was poorly drawn. This is way better. And begins to take it away from the eastern coast of the U.S. But still a big issue for coastal Florida, east coast of Florida, back towards southeast Georgia coast and the Carolinas. This still has to be watched as it takes off in that direction. Now here, the GFS ensemble numbers I was talking about. This changed between the morning newscast, from the early in the morning, like 8 o'clock newscast, to the late in the 8 o'clock newscast. And I noticed, some of you watch may have noticed me say that on there, like, oh, this has changed from the previous run. And we'll go over that right now. This is with the ensemble members. Again, an ensemble is a tweak in initial conditions and a rerun of the same model with different initial conditions for about a few dozen or so members. So there seems to be consensus of it going more west-northwest in the meantime as we get into Sunday evening. As we get into Monday, it starts to slow down, and you start to see that track a little bit more towards the north and more northwestward as we get into Monday. And then we start to see this continue that northerly jog. Again, we had ensemble members from the GFS yesterday, if I can recollect, stretching for some parts of maybe that westward one is too far out west, but some had it still coming up parts of Florida Peninsula, even out towards the Big Bend. But not today. We're not seeing that today. Instead, we're seeing more of a rightward jog with this. So again, which is some better news for the Big Bend of South Georgia. The coastal areas of Florida, the East Coast specifically, you're still close enough. You can still see some impacts for it, especially if it decides to jog a little bit more to the left, a little bit more to the west across that region. Now, remember, I'm not comparing this, but remember Hurricane Matthew in 2016. That technically didn't make landfall, but still caused considerable damage along the coastline, storm surge specifically. I remember seeing video from St. Augustine with that one. So the effects will be less the farther east it goes, but it cannot be ruled out. It hugs the coastline or even makes landfall along the Florida's east coast. So if you have friends and family over there, they need to be prepared. They need to be ready for this. Be watching this. Pay attention to the advisories issued over there by the National Hurricane Center as well. So, and then over time, this will continue to move off towards the north, hugging the coastline. Maybe some of these ensemble members make landfall across parts of maybe even southeast Georgia, towards Savannah and the Carolinas. Charleston can't be ruled out as well. Some parts of the Outer Banks can't be ruled out for impacts from this storm. So that's some better news. Now, I showed this during 8 o'clock newscast too. I think Mike McCall did yesterday evening. It's a graphic we kind of conjured up here. The probability of tropical storm force winds. The probability of that. So what you see, the numbers, the dots and everything on the screen, those are instantaneous probabilities based on a given scenario. And I'm curious to see if this is updated too from the previous updates, because this is from the National Hurricane Center actually. This is cumulative probability of tropical storm force winds, so added up over time as I advance this map, which I'm about to do right now. So let's go forward in time, shall we? Let's take a trip to the future here. Okay, this is much lower than it was before for Tallahassee. A 4% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds, 40 miles an hour or greater in the Tallahassee area. So cumulative 5% by the time we get to Tuesday evening. Not bad, much better than what it was before. Even earlier, it was about like 10% or so. So those odds continue to drop as the path, or the projected path, continues to inch towards the east. We'll roll this again, 8, 7%, total cumulative probability of 13%. So much better news for the Big Bend in South Georgia. Coastal areas still see some high probabilities for tropical storm force, even Daytona Beach, an instantaneous probability of 62%, 78% chance cumulatively, even 80% chance or greater for seeing those winds. So as I loop this in time, you can see the cumulative probabilities. Tallahassee, we're looking like we're in much better shape compared to what we were even seeing last night. So we're not 100% out of the woods. I would say we're about maybe 90% out of the woods for us in our neck of the woods. That's one way to put it. So looking at the Euro, these are the surface winds based on that run. Again, any deviation to the left or right will change this. But the worst case scenario on this run, Live Oak, Valdosta could see 14-mile-per-hour winds at the surface. Gets a little less as you head off towards the west, maybe about 8, 10 miles an hour here and there. So not too bad. Maybe a little bit of breezy at times. Could see some gusts still, but not looking too bad of a shape. And of course, as farther north this goes, by the time we get to Wednesday night and Thursday, things will continue to improve for us. So that's some good news, at least in our neck of the woods. This rainfall map I'm showing you has changed a lot since yesterday too. This is the GFS ensemble. Remember those little squiggly lines I showed you? Those were the ensemble members. Now this is when you average them all up. This time it's showing rainfall. And I got to tell you, the coastline, an inch or more, maybe greater in some locations, depending on how close this gets to the coastline. But once you head to Tallahassee, Valdosta, even Orlando, if that were to take place, maybe a third of an inch. A third of an inch possible Tallahassee, maybe a little bit more along the coast towards Panama City between now and next Saturday. So this is, again, looking like a better scenario. But any change left or right will change these numbers over time. So not really see temperatures right now, otherwise we're in the mid-80s at this point. I will show you one possible scenario with a good thing that may come out of this, for at least for us in the Big Bend in South Georgia. So this is the atmospheric moisture. For those who are meteorologically inclined, the precipitable water. Basically, you add up all the moisture from the surface all the way up to the atmosphere. This is where you see the oranges, deep oranges, that's more moisture. We see the blues, a bit drier. So we'll put this into motion. The good thing that would come out of this for us here in our neck of the woods is that with that northeast flow, and we can tend to see this too with passing tropical systems, if we are to the west of it, we'll get a northeasterly flow. That will pull in some drier air to our neck of the woods by the time we get to the mid to even maybe in the late part of the week. Again, that's as this scenario pans out, which we hope it will, for at least for us here in the Big Bend in South Georgia. But not so good news for, again, the Carolinas if this scenario were to take place. But for us, at least on the west side of this, some dry will be pulled down. Lower rain chances for us. It may feel a little bit drier out there too. We'll probably could see some dew points in the 60s based on some of the projections I saw. So to quickly recap, though, I'll pull it back to the 11 o'clock advisory. Again, still very powerful, very potent, very dangerous hurricane out there. Max sustained winds at 150. And it's projected, again, the projections, the cone of error has shifted more to the right based on some of the latest ensemble runs. So Tallahassee is doing far better than we were looking at last night or even the day before as that cone has shifted rightward. Let me scan real quick at some of these questions here. If there are any questions here. Let's see. Okay, I'm not really seeing too much here. Someone mentioned something about a storm brewing in the Gulf. There is something that the Hurricane Center is watching, and I believe they had a 10% probability. Let me see if I still have that on my slides here. On my slides, let's see. Stand by one moment. There's something that the Hurricane Center is watching, but I'm not expecting any development out of that. Ignore what you see there. Okay, this is what the Hurricane Center is watching. Again, that's a little disturbance rolling on through. They have odds for development very low, and more so once you get out towards 5 days. And as it's projected to move out towards the west. So a 20% chance of development with this feature over here as we get through days 5, only a 10% chance of development now. It's expected to go off more towards the west over time. Gradual development of the system is possible over the next several days while it moves slowly westward. Not expecting any impacts to our neck of the woods here or any of the U.S. Coastline based on this. So again, someone posted something about a threat for something brewing in the Gulf. There's something the Hurricane Center is watching, but the odds right now for development are on the low side. Let's see. So Monticello should be okay. Again, things are trending better for us here in the Big Bend in South Georgia. I will start naming off names. Again, Valdosta, Tallahassee, Thomasville, Bainbridge, Donaldsonville, looking better for us. The odds are looking better for us. Of course, as you go out towards the east, the odds are still there for some impacts. We'll continue to track these changes in the model guidance, but every time I see these come out and they track more eastward, I'm breathing more of a sigh of relief, and I believe some of you are too. Again, this is what look at the new GEFS ensemble members. They're still keeping it more eastward. Some of you may remember like a couple days ago, a lot of these were still pulling off more leftward, more towards the western half of the peninsula or even towards Tallahassee, but we're not seeing that right now. And that's something I like to see, though, as a meteorologist, consistency with location and timing. And I'm seeing, at least with the location, I am seeing a bit more consistency in terms of trends, direction. And that is some good news right there. Madison, yeah, of course, same deal. Things are looking better. Again, this is the center of circulation you see on your screen here, projections for our neck of the woods. And again, the probability of seeing tropical storm force winds continues to drop here across our area. Again, Tallahassee about 7% as we get into Tuesday. Maybe a 1% chance on Tuesday, early Tuesday morning, but as it's looking less and less. That's the point I want to get across. Now, of course, as you travel off towards more of the east, those odds will increase. In fact, Jacksonville, as we get into, say, let's pick it for the highest point here, you have about maybe a 40-some-odd% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds. Again, the farther east it goes, the better shape that we will be in. But those on Florida's east coast, those in South Georgia coastline, those towards the Carolinas, still need to watch this over the next few days. You're not completely written off just yet. So we'll continue to monitor it. Meteorologist Brittany Beatty will be here as we get into the evening hours. We'll be doing a live, of course, newscast as normal around 6 o'clock. There's an intermediate advisory at 2 o'clock, and that's not the full kit and caboodle from the Hurricane Center. It's more of just a standard update. If anything changes from recon, they'll be posted there. The full package of updates will be issued by the Hurricane Center at 5 p.m. That's our next big advisory, and we'll be covering that throughout the day into the evening hours. And hopefully these trends I'm seeing will continue and give us some better news here in the Tallahassee area and up towards Valdosta too. So looking better out there. Is a hurricane moving along the path of favorable SST? Sea surface temperatures, yes. I don't know if I have anything available on my screen, but I will say this. Water temps, even some places in the Bahamas are like bath water. That's the best way I can explain it. It's a nice little bath if you're going into the Bahamas for a vacation, although I wouldn't recommend that right now. But just saying, it's a bit warm out there, which is enough fuel for hurricane sustainability or intensification. And again, right now, the pressure continues, well, it's about a little bit lower than it was earlier, but it's still showing signs of maintaining itself and maybe even slight intensification based off some of the latest recon and observations that we've been seeing so far. Let me see if there's anything new while I'm still on screen here from the recon data. This flight is still out there. They're making another cross to the south right now. Nothing new. I think the lowest is 941. The most recent was 946. That was less than an hour ago. 138 miles an hour. Not sure if that's at the surface or at flight level. I'm guessing that's surface based because that seems a little bit low for a loft. So strong winds are still there. And I would definitely, for those on the east side, east coast of Florida, up to the Carolinas, need to keep an eye on this because it can't not completely be ruled out. All right, I think that's all I have for this morning. Again, thank you so much for watching. Again, next big update at 5 o'clock, intermediate advisory at 2 o'clock. Follow us on our social media channels, WCTV Pinpoint Weather on Facebook and also on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Charles Roop WCTV and also on Facebook too, Charles Roop WX. So that's all I have right now. Thank you all so much for watching. See you guys later.